Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. It is June the 2nd, 2025. Let's talk boxing. Let's talk heavyweight division. Let's give completely unsolicited, completely unnecessary, completely undesired career advice that's going to go unlistened to some fighters. My real game here, and it's a game, is to hip my subscribers to fighters out there and to see whether a fighter's underrated, to keep an eye on the fighter, to know what I think the guy can do. Let's talk about that. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, the heavyweight division has had big guys who are sluggers, right? That's where we are right now. Zhili Zhang comes to mind. Anthony Joshua comes to mind. Deontay Wilder comes to mind. Makhmudov comes to mind, right? You have a whole slew of guys. Martin Bakole comes to mind, right? Efe Ajagba, although Ajagba is a switch. He showed in his last fight he can be back foot and elusive. But he typically is knocking the daylights out of you, right? He comes to mind. What I think is going to happen, and understand, we go through different eras in boxing, is I believe we're on the verge of the shorter guy who is more coordinated, still a slugger, but he's more coordinated than these big guys. And he can get under them, and he can destroy them, right? We're also getting to a time where you're going to have big guys who actually see themselves as switches. In other words, the big guy who actually has boxing skills, who realizes he has the longer reach than the shorter guy. And if he can keep the shorter guy outside, the shorter guy is going to have to do something, especially if the tall guy can win the slow rounds. In other words, we're going to go from this era of big front foot slugger to an era of lateral moving, back foot, right? Planned counters, scorecard friendly big men. How do I know this? Let's throw out some names. In my favorites folder right now, I've been looking at young prospects. I've been looking at films. I have highlights of Moses Itauma. We've talked about him. Folks, he's ready right now. This is my first piece of unsolicited advice. I've given it previously in an earlier video. He's ready right now to fight Alexander Usyk. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, is he ready to fight for a title? Because understand, the guy who holds the title has a certain style. The question is he ready to take on that fighter? Not some abstract champ, but that fighter, the guy who has the title right now. I think the answer is yes. Right? Because Itauma is advanced. I don't care what his age is. He's advanced right now. First off, he's a southpaw. You'll notice he has a back foot. You'll notice he lands big shots, then he intuitively jumps back. You'll notice when he's fighting a righty, he comes in over on the left side. This is the southpaw guy setting up the angles. Dare I say it, I'm not trying to throw out a lot of hype here. This is actually what I believe. He's more advanced than most of the heavyweights out there right now. Right? Itauma is more advanced than some of the other guys I'm going to name, who I feel, like Itauma, are going to inherit the heavyweight division. Right? He is more advanced than Richard Torres. Right? I personally believe Torres is the best young heavyweight Top Rank has. Right? But Torres is front foot heavy. Right? Torres, you understand, wants to close the gap between you and him. Right? Now, just imagine if Torres actually had the rhythm, the discipline to actually change it up, to be on his back foot from time to time, to play with speeds. Right? Torres is always full tilt. Right? Itauma has the back foot. Itauma plays with speeds. I don't think opponents know how fast he can be. Right? In terms of hand speed. I think you're well into the midway part of the first round before Itauma throws a real punch on you. Right? Let me point out, too, in boxing we have this crazy idea, and it's crazy, that young guys, that some young guys aren't talented enough to actually figure out the nuances of the sport. Let me ask some awfully dumb questions here. In baseball, how old was Dwight Gooden when he ruled the roost? That Gooden curveball, folks, it was unhittable. In fact, Mike Schmidt, famously in an interview, said he knew he had to leave the sport when he started looking at Gooden's curveball. Gooden's curveball. Right? There are many sports where young guys have an edge on everyone. Because they're young, because they're vibrant, because they've lived the sport, and because they've picked things up. How old was Michael Jordan when he averaged 37 points a game in a season? Right, folks? That's Moses Itauma. Now let's talk about a guy he fought in the amateurs. A guy went the distance with him. The guy is not even a heavyweight. His name is Aloys Jr. Right, folks? You need to know this guy's name. Let me just say, there's some folks who are just born with punching power. Right? As they say in the sport, punchers are born. Now that's not 100% accurate, because of course Archie Moore somehow learned how to punch. Right? You do have guys who figure out during their careers how to shift weight and stuff like that. But let's just say, just like in other sports, right? Just like in football, American football, where some punters punt farther than everyone else. Baseball. Some pitchers, the guy's barely shaving, and yet he's throwing 98 miles an hour. Aloys Jr., cruiserweight, hits like a heavyweight. Now let's give unwanted advice. I know it's going to sound like I'm giving the same advice to people. Aloys Jr. has a gift, and it's a rare gift. Right? This is the guy who's flat-footed. Right? You'll see him, you'll notice his heel hits the canvas. He's full-on flat-footed at times. But he's young. Right? And because he's young, believe it or not, even though he's flat-footed, he moves extremely well. And what being flat-footed allows him to do with his quick hands is it allows him to throw these withering hooks He has hand speed. He's hitting guys who don't even have a hand up. In other words, they have hands up, but they don't have the time to actually protect themselves. Right? He's that fast. He's one of the best body punchers in the sport of boxing. Right? I know they don't tell you that. Nobody has to tell you. Just look at the fights. You're going to see him hitting guys in the body. It's quick. Right? This is the natural talent. Right? He's quick-handed. He hits hard. Much harder than his weight class. Understand, he's at cruiser. I'm telling you, he hits like a heavy. We seem to have forgotten that Archie Moore, who I mentioned earlier, the light heavyweight king, actually fought at heavyweight. Right? Joe Frazier, Rocky Marciano. I want people to look at the weights of one of the hardest punchers I've seen, Deontay Wilder, for some of his fights. He's on the lighter side of heavyweight. Look at the weights, in fact, of Ali and Frazier the first time they fought. Now, the problem Aloys Jr. faces, this is a major talent. He lost his first fight, just like Bernard Hopkins did, just like Juan Manuel Marquez did. Right? He lost his first fight. Folks, the problem he has is that cruiserweight right now has two of the best fighters pound for pound in the sport. Right, folks? That's who Jay Opataya is. That's who Gilberto Ramirez is. Right, folks? The door's shut at cruiser right now. Let's just say the challenge Aloys Jr. would face at cruiser, and Opataya has two of the best legs in the sport. Gilberto Ramirez is one of the sport's premier body punchers. Worse yet, he's one of the best technicians in the sport. Right? This is a guy fighting Goulamirian. Who else could put his head on Goulamirian's chest repeatedly and get away with it? I'm laughing in this video. It's so preposterous. He took Goulamirian's title. He was fighting Joe Smith. Think about it. Joe Smith, slugger, comes to knock you out, knock Bernard Hopkins out of the ring. Right? Gilberto Ramirez, the body puncher, decides he's going to be outside. And of course, Ramirez is the inside-outside guy. From the outside, he establishes his jab against Joe Smith and beats him. Now, if I'm Aloy Jr., look, I don't care what my management's telling me. Right? Number one, I know they pay better at heavyweight, don't they? Number two, I'm looking at these guys. Opataya beat Maris Briedis twice. I still think, of all the guys to fight Usyk, Maris Briedis gave him the toughest fight. I still believe that. Right? Well, recognize that, Opataya, the first fight I thought was close. Right? Briedis breaks Opataya's jaw. The second fight wasn't close. Right? If I'm Aloys Jr., I'm thinking, look, I'm a young guy. I'm faster-handed than most of the heavyweight division. I've already sparred with Daniel Dubois. Right? Why don't I go to the heavyweight division, start making a name for myself? Right, folks? I think against many heavyweights, and understand, Aloys Jr. isn't Moses Itauma. Right? Itauma is a different level of angles, back foot, punches thrown in third gear, different angles of punches. Itauma, of course, hits hard, but Itauma can box. right? Aloys Jr. is still learning the boxing part. You understand, sooner or later, he's going to be in the pocket, right? His thought process is to come after you. Believe it or not, Itauma's thought process is different. It's at what angle can I set up shop and not get hit? Right? What's this guy's rhythm? Where can I throw powerhouse counters as my lead punch? That's Itauma. Right? Have I suckered this guy into believing that this is the fastest I can throw punches? Aloys Jr. is a little bit different. He's in front of you. He's bent a little low. He's fought some guys who are bigger than him. They can't believe how committed he is to throwing his hooks in the pocket. Right? This is the guy who beats you up inside the pocket. You cannot trade with Aloys Jr. And of course, this is the guy who understands headshots are just part of the game. Right? He's going to mix in headshots with body shots. Right? Well, folks, know these names. Because if I were Itauma, I would be openly calling out fellow Southpaw Usyk. I believe that's a fight he's very competitive in. Very competitive. Right? If I'm Aloys Jr., I look at the tape and I have to be thinking to myself, if I get inside on a Jared Anderson, does he have the defense to deal with my short, hard, quick punches? Right? If I get close to one of these big guys who sees himself as a power puncher, right, how's the guy gonna match my hand speed? If I smother the guy, how's the guy gonna change his punches so with longer arms his punches can actually land on me? Right, folks, if Aloys Jr. hits anyone in the sport flush in the head, you're going down. That's how hard the guy hits. He's a blessed puncher. Right? If I were these guys, I'd be very careful in terms of the matchmaking. Right? I would stay away from Richard Torres because you lose some of your effectiveness if you're in with another fast guy who's roughly your height, who's also trying to come at you. Right? Understand, Torres himself is a southpaw. Right? You're going to have a heavy dosage of southpaws. You're going to have a heavy dosage of hand speed. Right? You're going to have a heavy dosage of knockouts, but it's not going to be the big guys. It's going to be this new breed of shorter heavyweight. Right? So, to Aloys Jr., and I know it sounds like I'm sending everyone to the heavyweight division. If I'm him, I seriously think about taking on Bridgerweight champion Kevin Lorena. Right, folks? Justice Honey, who's about to fight Fabio Wardley, beat Lorena. Lorena did get stopped after knocking down Daniel Dubois more than once. Lorena did get stopped by Daniel Dubois. Right? Lorena almost certainly is going to be right in front of Aloys Jr. Lorena does have a back foot, fairness to him, but he's going to view, because Bridgerweight, of course, is not 210, it's not 215, it's up around 224. He's going to view Aloys Jr. as a smaller guy. Folks, that favors Aloys Jr. As I said, you don't want to get hit by this guy. right? Look at the weights that Rocky Marciano, another blessed puncher, fought some of his biggest matches, the Jersey Joe Walcott fights, right? Understand, Marciano's the guy who knocked Joe Louis, much bigger guy, knocked Joe Louis out of the ring. It takes a while for the world to wake up to the fact that a guy hits like a heavyweight. It really does. And if I'm Aloys Jr., all I'm saying is fighting J.O. Pitaya, is fighting Gilberto Ramirez. As, you know, aren't those the hardest things you can do? Isn't he better off fighting Kevin Lorena? Isn't he better off moving up to heavyweight? Understand, if he fights the right guy, right, and if he gets the stoppage, Jarrell Miller, for example, if he fights a guy like Jarrell Miller, Miller is going to end up in the pocket sooner or later. You know, Miller thinks he can slug with you. I'm telling you, Miller can't slug with this guy. Right? If he beats a guy like that, understand what's wrong with being young, what's wrong with beating some known heavyweights, what's wrong with putting yourself in the mix in the heavyweight division. Folks, sooner or later, the old guard is going to have to leave the building. Tyson Fury is telling you he's retired. Right? Usyk's 38. AJ's coming off surgery. Right? Deontay Wilder has people like Tony Bellew saying, hey, he's done. Right? Father Time waits for no man. And so my point is simply this. What's wrong with now showing up in the heavyweight division? It's the deepest it's been in a long time. Fighting some known heavyweights. Right? You tell me what would happen if Aloys Jr. fought Justice Honey. I believe Honey would be on his back foot. I believe it would take, and Honey's dangerous on his back foot. Right? He, as I mentioned, he beat Kevin Lorena. I don't mean to disparage an unbeaten fighter. Right? But it would take those guys about 2 rounds to figure out that the guy coming up from cruiser is actually the puncher in the fight. Right? Honey would have to try to win that fight on his back foot. I believe Aloys Jr. would be competitive with Justice Honey, who had a distinguished amateur career today. Honey's getting a nice big check fighting Fabio Wardley in his backyard. Right? If I'm Aloys Jr., and folks, this guy fought Moses Itauma, lost in the amateurs, and went the distance in 2019. Right? In other words, Aloys Jr. has been around. Right? He's not a newbie in the sport. He took the fight where he got the loss on just a few hours' notice. It's short by even Martin Bakole standards. Right? Didn't Bakole have like a day or so before his fight against Joe Parker? Here, Aloys Jr. fought a tough guy. And let me just say, when a young fighter on just a few hours' notice takes on a tough guy in his first pro fight, you understand there has to be some people in the background who think he has a shot at winning that fight. And he almost did. Right, so pay attention to the names. Itauma, for me, is probably top of the food chain for this next generation. Right? Aloys Jr., Richard Torres. I'll put Jared Anderson in this list. He is explosive. He does have a huge right hand. He can actually be ambidextrous. Right? He just has to figure out that Martin Bacoli, he's not ready for Martin Bacoli, right? Trading with Martin Bacoli wasn't the best move for him. He could have won that fight. It's clear now from the film of the Ajagba fight. If he went on his back foot, and a frustrating thing, and it's frustrating with Jared Anderson, is that he has a back foot. But the guy gets lulled in the fights. He openly admitted after the Jerry Forrest fight that Forrest hit him in the mouth. He lost his temper. Right, folks? At the top of the game, you can't lose your temper. So the old guard, whether they want to or not, they're going to start leaving the building. I'll agree, heavyweights age more slowly than everyone else. But understand, when you start having surgeries like AJ just had, and when you have a lot of money in the bank, you know, you're not spending your time fantasizing how it would be to be heavyweight champ because you've been heavyweight champ multiple times. Right? When you're in that position, you'll be surprised how, when you look at films of Moses Itauma and Aloys Jr., you'll be surprised how easy it is to say, I'm going to walk away from the sport. People know who I am. I have a brand. No reason for me to continually play the role of lion tamer in fight after fight, right? Especially after getting knocked down several times by Daniel Dubois. I've heard the rumors that AJ has a new 2-fight deal and stuff like that. But let's just say in boxing, as they say in the sport, either you retire from the sport or the sport retires you. Right? I think a lot of these older guys, they're going to start fading into the background. Folks, the new guard's here. We've been watching a lot of guys in their 30s. Right? If I'm Aloys Jr., I pull out film clips of not just Joe Frazier, Rocky Marciano. I pull out film clips of another smaller heavyweight, Ezzard Charles. Right? Ezzard Charles was actually a light heavyweight. He killed a man in the ring. That's how good he was. It scared him. So he decided he would go up to heavyweight. Ends up beating Joe Louis. Right? If I'm Aloy Jr., I educate myself on who has been heavyweight champ, how much they weighed, how big they were. Right? I would look at Rocky Marciano films. I would think to myself, man, I move better than Marciano. Right? Fighting these big guys, I might have a coordination advantage. I might have a punching power advantage. He's two-handed, folks. Let me say this too. Manny Pacquiao showed up for a media event with Mario Barrios. Right? And of course, people were struck by the size gap. Right? A lot of people must not have been alive when Manny ruled the roost. Folks, that's when Pacquiao's at his best. Right? It's when Pacquiao's fighting bigger guys. De La Hoya, Antonio Margarito. Right? That's when Pacquiao's at his best because the guy is too coordinated. He's too damn fast. He's too sudden. Right? It's when he's fighting someone who's more coordinated, more his size. Right? Floyd Mayweather. That Pacquiao has problems. Right? Understand. I know there are a lot of boxers who view themselves as alpha. If Mario Barrios comes in the ring and he sees Manny Pacquiao and he thinks, oh, let me go over there and rough this guy up. Right? I saw this guy in some exhibition fights where he didn't look like the big bad wolf. Right, folks, this is a real fight now. Exhibitions, there's not really going to be a winner. You're fighting in part for charity, yada, yada. Right? Folks, real fight, Man, he's looking around the division and he's thinking, man, if I beat this guy, who's going to beat me? Was that Ennis getting hit in the face by Stanionis? Right? Norman, how old is he? 23? Is he ready for me? Right? I mean, Pacquiao right now is looking at ruling the roost at 147. Folks, sometimes the smaller man has the advantage. Right? Guys couldn't find Joe Frazier. Even the Foreman fight, the first one, where he lost his title. In fact, hell, both fights. Foreman's only way of keeping Joe Frazier off of him was to illegally push him away. Look at the film. Right? Foreman couldn't keep Joe Frazier off of him. And Foreman had a great jab. With a jab, because Frazier, of course, is bobbing and weaving. Right? Frazier's not only fighting low, but Frazier's going even lower. Right? Bobbing and weaving. Foreman pushed him away. Then as Joe tried to come forward, that's when Foreman landed the bombs. A better referee would have at least given Foreman a warning. Right? Smaller guys can be the most dangerous guys. Keep your eye on Aloys Jr., as well as, of course, Moses Itauma, Richard Torres. Right? Keep your eye on those fighters. We'll throw in Jared Anderson. Right? Anderson, of course, is a bigger guy. The other three guys are smaller guys by today's heavyweight standards. Understand, Alexander Usyk is a bigger man than Sonny Liston. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.